Okay, so for our management 3000 writing intensive group project, we are doing the history of management and we are group 22, which is me. I'm Alex, Trey, Ryan, Tony, and Kennedy. So, what will we be talking about today? We're going to start with a little introduction, which is what I'm talking about, and then we'll do the historical background behind management. Then we'll move on to modern day applications and then current examples, and then we'll finish off with a review. So, the history of management, what is it? It is really essential for current management today and what we've learned so far. So, it helps people learn from past mistakes. It helps people learn how to adapt to changes and then prepares people to watch out for future issues. And then the process of how we chose this topic, we went through Canvas and looked at what we covered each week through different speakers, videos, podcasts, and then we each voted individually on what we wanted. And then we kind of got down to our final two and then voted again, and we all agreed this would be a good topic. So why did we choose this topic? We wanted to focus on real world examples, so this was pretty a good topic to have because you could take it in a lot of different ways, and it was pretty wide and generic, so we could do it in different ways. And then we want to be able to tell a story. So this topic is pretty easy, just being able to tell stories about different companies. And um, we're using like Breaking Bad as an example and how that story and how that management works out with that show. So now we're going to do the history, and Ryan is going to cover the history.
Yeah, so the historical background of management, it's got roots in a lot of ancient cultures, and a lot of different cultures have contributed to the growth of management over the years. So, kind of starting back with the Sumerians and the kind of Fertile Crescent, back in ancient times, they had a flourishing merchant culture because they were kind of the first society to use currency. This kind of, without having to barter, they were a lot more active in the economy, and that required a lot of writing and coordination to enable trade. A little later on, the Sumerian king Hammurabi wrote written laws, kind of first known codes of law and kind of the regulated business. These written command and control models set wages for a lot of workers in his kingdom. Later on, Nebuchadnezzar, another king, would create incentive wages. He would do this by encouraging weavers to weave more, and the more weaving they did, the more food they got as part of their wage. Next was the ancient Egyptians. They had a division of labor and a huge coordination and span of control. They built the canals, irrigations, and obviously the pyramids, which took a lot of labor and a lot of people coordinating and very specialized roles. And it's notable that these infrastructure projects actually surpassed what the Romans and Greeks would be capable of later. The ancient Chinese kind of came up with the idea of a bureaucracy, or having like scholars trained in order to make decisions. They also kind of began the idea of a meritocracy, where those who were kind of good at their jobs would then get promoted in charge of more people, manage larger groups of laborers. The next were the Greeks. The Greeks took a lot more philosophical approach to management. Socrates encouraged an atmosphere of sharing information and analysis and kind of thinking about what had been done in the past and how to make it better. And then Plato, once again, kind of harps on this idea of a division of labor, having people specialize in certain tasks. The Romans later came up with standardization. The Romans obviously had a massive empire that required standard measures of weights and coins for that vast empire. And Rome also saw the birth of the modern corporation and the stock exchange. Next was in the Renaissance that saw the birth, just in Italy, of the modern corporation, banking and bookkeeping. There's actually banks in Italy that had branches throughout Europe, kind of creating the first multinational corporations that were giving out loans to kings and queens across Europe. And also the complex merchant activities going on in Italy required a need for accountants, and the kind of the first the first accountants and bookkeeping was done, and then kind of the first idea of double entry bookkeeping was brought into place. Kind of lastly, the Industrial Revolution, England saw the first global corporations, the two big ones being the Hudson Bay Company and the East India Company. Hudson Bay was responsible for the fur trade in North America and kind of colonies here in the New World. And then the East India Company was responsible for trade throughout the British Empire in Africa and India and the Far East. Another major contributor to the idea of management was Adam Smith, who was a Scottish economist in the mid 1800s. He wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations, which is actually a very influential book in economics. But he brought this idea that within firms, they should have specialization and coordination in order to grow economically and grow their profits. And then lastly, management changes with the growth of the kind of industrial economy. Production went from family-based to factory productions. Instead of having shops in which the production was in the shop and then sold at the shop, there'd be huge factories now where laborers were brought in to do large amounts of production to then be sold later. And this created a large demand for managers that we see today. So next, Tony's going to talk about modern day examples of management.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Tony. I'm going to talk about general modern day applications of management today. And the example that we chose to use is Breaking Bad. It's really just a great example of a modern day application of management. The two main characters in this show, Walter White and Jesse Pinkman, are two of the main characters in the show that demonstrate leadership and management skills. Although the activities that they participate in the show are illegal, they run a methamphetamine operation. The show really just touches on many themes related to management, such as leadership, decision-making, and strategic planning. The show starts off, Walter's a chemistry teacher, and he doesn't make a lot of money, and he finds out that he's diagnosed with lung cancer. So he's worried for his family's sake because he doesn't have much time to live. He potentially has 6 months to a year to live. So he has to find another way as a source of income to provide for his family because he doesn't have much to leave behind if he passes away. The show, like I said, touches on themes like management and leadership and all those things. Another big theme in the show is effective management leadership. So Walter becomes more involved in this drug trade and develops strong leadership skills and is able to manage a successful operation. Making good decisions was also a major theme in the show. Walter and his partners were constantly conflicted with many dilemmas where they had to make tough decisions just in order to survive because they were in obviously a drug business, which is a dangerous thing, but the reward was high for him, which is why he decided to go and take that path. And they realized the consequences of their decisions had a strong impact on their business and personal lives. For example, their personal lives, they were conflicted with dangerous people that, they had to take care of, and they ended up killing people in the show just to survive. Strategic planning is also a major theme in the show. Walter and his partners, were always just looking for new ways to grow and stay ahead of their competition. Strategic operation, marketing, finances are all part of their success as well. By just controlling their market and the money that they had to invest in their business. It's just a compelling example of how management can be applied to many different circumstances. It not only used to run a business, but can be used to lead a team or just navigate challenges of everyday life. Overall, like the lessons of the show can just be very valuable for anyone interested in the topic of management. Just as you see, in the show, Walter White's a very strong leader and takes charge with the group of people he works with, and they have many great successes, obviously in a negative way. But like I said, it's a very valuable show if you're interested in the topic of management. So that was an overview of a general modern day application. Now I will turn it over to Trey to talk about current examples of adaptive management and organizational structures.
Yeah, next, we are just going to look at a couple examples of how current businesses have adapted with their management styles and their like organizational structures. And we're going to see how they change within like certain companies over time. The first company we'll be talking about is Microsoft. Prior to 2015, the company was on the decline. Besides struggling to compete with other tech giants such as Google, there was a lot of toxicity within the company. There's low employee morale, on top of the fact that the departments felt like they were competing against one another instead of working together. The big management shift occurred when a new CEO, Satya Nadella, was appointed. Microsoft then shifted their departments around so that everyone was sharing common goals in order to help them like work together. By doing so, this created a more positive work environment for Microsoft and pointed them in like the right direction for the future of their company. And then we thought it would help to include their organizational structure in the next slide. And here you can see it's a very simplified organizational structure, but it kind of shows when they made that like adjustment. They have a divisional organizational structure. As you can see here, we have the general manager, which then breaks away into three other managers. You have on the left, we have the functional manager, this is just basically like human resources, finances, legal and corporate affairs, etc. All like the maintenance stuff to run the company. In the middle is basically two departments that Microsoft focuses on after their switch. They wanted to focus on cloud AI and experiences and devices. And this is just so they can, instead of branching out and running their company too thin, they're able to come together and focus on two departments that they feel like they could dominate in the tech industry. And on the right, you should have project managers, which is just the people that are working on the implementation of the work that the engineering managers and the people under them that are doing. And the next company we will discuss is Google. Google has had different problems in which they grew as a company and expanded in multiple different areas. All the different departments complicated the structure and flow of the company, and this led to a Google co-founder, Larry Page. He decided that there needs to be a big reconstruction of the company. They thought that this was because it was just extremely hard to manage and almost impossible. The restructure separated the different areas into different companies, all under an umbrella corporation called Alphabet. This enabled the separate departments to work individually and focus on their own growth instead of having to hassle with any of the unrelated departments. Larry Page thought this would make scaling the company significantly easier and more efficient. It is also said to believe that this change allows the employees to focus on what they're building solely and providing rather than Google's overall performance. And then in the next slide, we can see their organizational structures. And here you can kind of see that Google, like the main stuff for Google is on this left side, and all their other like side companies that prior to the reconstruction, they would just consider Google. They all got separated. So now they're not all the same entity and they can all focus and able to work a little more efficiently. And it makes the management process much easier to control. And that was a little bit about current adaptive management within some companies. And now I'll let Kenny talk to you about our references.
So the review of our resources used to make this presentation, we had, as far as communication goes, we utilized that through a group message and a group FaceTime for collaboration outside of class. We typically met a handful of times, either in Tuesday afternoons or on the weekends. And that was real easy for us with all of us using iPhones. So it was real easy. Everybody had access to that. So as far as presentation resources go, we did the outline using Google document with the slideshow being used on Canva. That was also an easy resource that we used that everybody knew how to do. Once it was shared with all of us, we all had 24/7 access, so we could work on it as we pleased. Some other resources we also used, numerous websites were used from my other partners, and they were cited throughout the presentation as well as on the outline. And Tony's example of Breaking Bad, which could be used or be streamed through Netflix. So that was another resource that we had. This concludes Group 22's presentation on the history of management.